here we have a lacrosse team. McGill. Are you all players?
Yeah.
We got to get a game between you guys and Akwesasne, huh?
Do we get to keep Isaiah or no?
Just for your information, I got invited by the Prime Minister to do a medicine game on Parliament Hill in the spring. And he's still looking for players to play against us. And we made a whole bunch of sticks like this. I said, sure, we'll play you, but we're using this kind of stick. And he wanted to a reenactment game. So he's going to get a bunch of people to voluntarily play on his team. And we'll get indigenous players from Ganawaga and Akwesasne. And we have some, I asked him, I said, if you want to get older players or mix them up or just younger players. He says, let's meet and see what we got. He says they could find this really exciting to reenact a historic type game. So we'll be making these kind of sticks to play, and that's how we'll play the game in historic times with those kind of sticks. I know today we're all getting pretty used to having plastic type sticks. Rules are more conform. And have any of you ever hear of the MIL, the National League Lacrosse Pro League? Wayne Gretzky just bought a team in Las Vegas. And he's vowed to popularize lacrosse at the same level as NHL hockey. And he's got a whole of other people like himself that have money that can invest in the development of at the pro level. In 1974-75, we had a pro league here in Montreal, a pro team. They were called the Montreal Québécois. And if you're ever doing a study on the game of lacrosse, you can start there because they had Toronto, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, all lacrosse hotbeds. What killed it from the experiment was Montreal was the center. John Ferguson, the hockey legend, was the owner, and he was a coach. Jim Bishop, another lacrosse legend type, was a coach. And in 1976, can anybody tell me what happened in Montreal?
The Expo.
An international event took place. Olympics came, and Montreal was the host. And the event took charge of all the venues. And so they had to suspend where they play out of. They had to wait a year, suspend operations, and they couldn't get it going again. But I watched some of those games. My brother played for Montreal Québécois. He was a goalie. And to see an actual box type game played at a professional level, there was 14,000, 15,000 people that would come and watch the team play. It was building because by the time they got to the second year. And it's such an exciting type of game that people just got hooked on it. In Montreal, the second year, or Quebec City, the Quebec Caribou won the championship game between them and Montreal. 23,000 saw the last championship game in Quebec City. In an old stadium that only holds 16,000, 17,000. I don't know how they squeezed everybody else in there, so they must have just formed line by line. It was such an event, they thought, oh, we're in. You know, lacrosse is going to be big. And they had Quebec-based players on their team, as did Montreal. They also had indigenous players. Gaylord Paulus played for Montreal. Bruce Rompoint from Akwesasne played for Montreal. And so I kind of looked very secure that if you wanted to play pro level, the money was going to be there, The promotion was going to be there. The ownership wanted to spend money. And then by the third year, they didn't sell the game of lacrosse in the United States as well as they wanted. And they decided to take a break with the Olympics. A lot of the teams didn't come back. So they suspended. It took maybe another 20 years before Major Lacrosse came back in pro lacrosse. And that's what we have now. Toronto Rock, you might have heard them at the pro level. They play in Toronto. And they're always looking, for homegrown players. I was happy when I heard that we have teams, McGill and other institutions that are developed, because lacrosse isn't a big thing in university level. You'd have to go in the States from high school, college, university. Lacrosse is big in the United States, and they're just hungry. So for them, they want to exploit the thirst of the popularity of the game, being hungry to play, and promote it. And so Wayne Gretzky got into the act, and he says, I want to purchase a team, and I want to place them in a bidding city like Las Vegas. And a lot of other people that are investing their money to develop pro lacrosse. I'll say this because I see a lot of young players. If you are a good player and you want to have a chance at a pro level lacrosse, think about that and just Google, and it'll tell you what they're thinking about growing a game. So I think there's 31, maybe even more now, cities that have franchises. So I want to say that, but what I was really invited to come down is to talk about the different types we call the ball and stick game. This is Choctaw. Lacrosse was played across North America in one form or another. Each nation had a game. And so I'm just going to let you pass it around, take a look. And
Thank you.
These kind of sticks, the way they play is small ball, one up, deer leather, and you pick it up like this. There's a one post that you have to hit the top. And if you miss, the other team picks it up, and they've got a whole field. They have to take it down that way. It's a pretty rough sport. I've seen it played. I thought when they said lacrosse, we'd be using one of those sticks, but they didn't. They use little sticks that they create, their own invention, creativity. When we introduced the game in Eastern North America, Mohawks, Oneidas, Onondagas, Cayugas, Senecas, and Tuscaroras, people of the Haudenosaunee. And they had a game, they played an open field. And they're tied very much to their culture. And so they call it a medicine game. And whenever there's a difference between nations, something they disagreed on, and rather than having a war that they used to have with one another, the elders said, we'll set up a lacrosse game. The creator is going to be witnessing this game. You play with all your might. So all the lacrosse players will get as best condition as they could, play with great vigor to represent their community, their nation. And at the end of the day, at the end of the game, whichever side won would win the argument. And so there's another story about the Haudenosaunee. They operated under principles of governance they called the Great Law. Great Law of Peace. And you won't find too much of it in your history book. But that was their guiding principle. And they were attached to certain things on the land from the natural world. And so the game of lacrosse was one. They would run with a lacrosse stick, and because of the way the face is long, was really geared for long passes. It was the game itself was modified. If you know anything about lacrosse, you might know of a man named George spears. And he took the game of lacrosse and modified it. And today, in modern, he was the inventor of some of the rules that exist today. Now, the last time I played, I'm 76 now, and I played right till I was in my 60s. We had a what we call old-timers team that based out of Akwesasne, but we compete in Vancouver and in Alberta against other teams. And if you love the game of lacrosse, you try to play as long as you can. And this is what we did. But this is our idea of a modern type stick. And we still have tournaments among indigenous communities, and each of us will use a traditional wooden stick. There's something I can share with all the lacrosse players. They say when you're born, a child is born, a boy, and from the time he's a baby, the father will give him a small stick. And that small stick, wooden stick, will stay with him. As he's growing up, it becomes a larger stick that he can play with. All his life, he will have a stick. He'll always be close to him. Because the training involving the stick are the lessons of life. Because the wood comes from the natural world, and the connection to the natural world are teachings the elders give to you. Respect for land, respect for creation. There are ceremonial sounds that go with it. And there's a way of life that teach you to respect everything of creation. People, animals, bird life, the land itself. How you hunt and how you share are all teachings related to how you conduct yourself and how you play the game. They say, how do you honor your creator? Through ceremony, and then when they do medicine. Sometimes a person, because of death, because of sickness, they'll pick one elder and they'll do a medicine game for him. Well, it isn't just a game, because the elders know what type of medicine has to be made, and then they'll do it over ceremony. And there's sounds that go with it, and then the actual game itself. So by the time they're done, it's only that for that one person to raise his conscience, to raise his spirit, and also to heal his body. So the game has a far deeper cultural meaning for us. That's outside the sport of lacrosse. What I'm sharing with you is the attitude of elders that say, our nation is built on principle of respect. And so the teachings that we get as indigenous people is based strongly on the roots. They say the stick itself comes from a living tree. And because you play with it, you will honor life. You will know as you play the game that you are attached to the land yourself. And so every elder that teaches you the lessons of life comes from when you're small. So the game of lacrosse wasn't just a sport, it had a deep cultural background to it. And then there are also songs and dances that goes with it. And so we all have this one little special place. Young people will work with the elders, people who played the game long ago. So sometimes we go through turmoil as a community, as we did in Akwesasne in 1990s, and we fought over unregulated casinos, fast money, and what it did to our people divided our family, father against son, brother against brother, and we went through hell. There was a civil war type that took place, people died, and at the end, after all that took place, a tragedy, destruction of property, we didn't know how to put our people minds back together to get people talking again. My brother was a professional player, Ernie Mitchell. Him and Bruce Rompine, Mike Benedict, some of the guys that played, and they're now in their early 30s. They got together and they said, we're going to collect names. We're going to start up a league of over 35, and we're going to find out how many want to play. So what happened, they were astonished to find over 80 players signed up. Except in their thinking, they thought they're going to be a team that's going to represent the church, a team's going to represent the longhouse faction, a team's going to represent the elective system, a team's going to represent the traditional. You know, everybody's going to play on a team that they believe in. So when we all got together on that one day, my brother told everybody, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to take a grocery bag, and each of you is going to drop your names in that bag. We're going to draw. Whatever your name comes up, you're going to play for that team. And all the people's names that we're going to draw, that's going to be your team. And so all our former enemies, people that we fought with, are now our teammates. And that's the medicine game that people talked about. Now, I was the Grand Chief for 32 years in Akwesasne. That's a long time to be in public life. You do accumulate enemies along the way. You have to enforce. You have to produce. And so my brother said, you have to come back and play again. And I thought I was just going to watch. And he said, no. Some of these players really hate on you. They want to get you on that floor. He says, but lucky for you, it's a game of no contact. There's no rough stuff, no contact. Well, it just wasn't exactly true. When first time I hit the floor with my team, I got dropped regularly. And but you get back up. Anyway, the referees were the ones that were giving out penalties, and when they finally saw if you act rough, if you're trying to main a player, in a penalty box. And so they finally figured out you have to play fair. And then we start talking about what does lacrosse, the game of lacrosse, mean to us as Indigenous people. And the elders came and spoke, and out of that, all the former enemies of one team started relating to each other. You pass to him, passes back, you score, and that former enemy comes up to you and it gives you a high five. Well, the families are all watching. And they're scattered. One faction's over here, another family's over here, another family. By the end of the game, they're all talking to each other again. The players are talking. And so at the end of the season, we got invited to a lacrosse championship competition in Vancouver, British Columbia. They invited top teams that played in the Mann Cup, President's Cup. So, and these are guys that probably left the game a few years back. They're still young. So we didn't know how we were going to do, but it was a challenge. So we sent 2 teams from our league. Long story short, we both took the championship gold in both levels. I played in the older level, my brother played in the younger level, but it was a thought of them playing as a team. It was a thought that they had played again, carried a stick, and by the end of the summer, the motion, the rhythm, everything had returned, and they wound up playing the game to its highest level. We made so many friends mixing with non-native players out there from different provinces that they said, you carry the game. You carry the game with pride. This is your game. And so by the time we come home from a community that was fighting before, everybody was lined up by the bridge. They put on a big feast. And the recovery began. People started talking to each other again. And that healing took place. And we didn't know when we started the old sticks, when my brother said, we have to heal, and the only way we can heal is in a culture that was historically, they belonged to us. And when we got back and they put on a big feast, a celebration, honoring the players, and then they said, it's time for people to speak to each other again. It's time for us to be one people again, one mind. That's what the game of lacrosse did for us. And we put the culture back into the game. Nowadays, we had, I think last year, we had 6 nations in Akwesasne fighting for the Junior B Championship. And before the game started, one of their players from Six Nations got some singers played over the PA system, and he started doing the smoke dance. Well, the smoke dance is a fierce, fast warrior dance. And unbeknownst to them that we had some pretty fine dancers ourselves, and some kids jumped out, and right in the middle, and the crowd went crazy. We didn't even think about how that part aroused the hearts and spirits of everybody watching the game. And so that's what we carry. We also, I'm a board member of the Haudenosaunee Nationals. We play international competition. And there's about 87 countries that play now the game of lacrosse. It's a fast-growing sport. They're now playing both box version and field lacrosse. There's a spot for both of them. And California is going to be hosting the Olympics in a few years. They're featuring the game of lacrosse as an Olympic sport. They're putting all those pieces together. It's going to be something exciting for the world to see. Because there's so many countries now picking up the game that they figure it's going to be, it met the eligibility, it met the interest, and as a sport. So what happened was it's going to its final stages. You'll probably be hearing about it. And when they feature the game of lacrosse as an Olympic sport, it's going to be a big dynamic thing because Canada has many fine players, as well as the United States. They always finish 1-2. Up for the last 5 years, Iroquois Nation is one of the top 3 teams in the world. And we always give a good run. We've beaten the United States a few times. We've beaten Canada a few times. But we have our own program of introducing our game at a competitive level. Because the game has many cultural features, you know, we have to play lacrosse as a sport, and we have to play the game remembering it has a history, it has a culture, so we put that aside, but remember the spirit of it. And so I've written 2 books now on the game of lacrosse. And I brought a few with me that I want to have a little auction later, a little competition. But basically, what I wanted to bring to your attention, in the early 1800s, through George Beers, and every community across Canada had a lacrosse team of sorts. Winnipeg, British Columbia, Alberta, way down east in Maritimes. Everybody had a lacrosse team that represented their community. All across the United States, people played lacrosse, and they figured it was going to be a dynamic thing that's going to probably be as popular as the booming baseball, later basketball, but it would be a major sport. Well, the World Wars kind of slowed that down, and it didn't never really capture the imagination the way they thought it would. So many years later, now it's becoming a very big thing for universities, for education institutions, Army, Navy. Everybody has some lacrosse program going. Other countries of the world are picking up the game. You have the Czech really becoming a major dominant force in the game of lacrosse. Australia, England, everybody has a feature of the game. And when they all play at an international level, it's a big thing. But these are things that people play when they play against each other. It doesn't have the brightness, the ferocity that one would expect. And this is the part that our people played in. Now they're asking if we could introduce elements of indigenous flavor to the game in different forms. And what we've chosen, our traditional teachings as indigenous people, is the history and the culture that we have. Our governance is based on peace. And so this is, we will promote a more peaceful world. And we'll take sections of our culture and share it with them. There are songs, there's dances, and there's ceremonial things that we can share. And it's expressed through dance, it's expressed through the game. And so we've been making little inferences at whatever country we're there. And it starts with when teams are introduced. Canada's introduced. The team marches out. They stand next to each other. And when they're finally front and center, they play Canada's national anthem. Then the United States marches out. The same thing. Stand with the other players. They play the United States national anthem. Well, of all the countries competing, we're the last ones usually to be introduced because the flavor, when they come out, we don't really have a national anthem song of sorts, but we do have a friendship traditional song, a chant. And so when our players come out, it's a slow rhythmic and everybody's in unison and they all sing the same song. And when they come to the stop where they're supposed to be, everything is quiet. There's thousands of people watching, but they can feel the excitement, what they bring. Their culture, custom, the message is based on a great tree of peace. Their teachings is everything based on how to work things out between people, how to have the best of yourself. You can give the best to your family, to your community, to your nation, make them proud. And how is your attachment to the natural world? How is your attachment to the Creator? And so all our life's teachings is based around a game that people are promoting, our people. So they've gone to all the different countries and played. Now, it's not just an interest, because we usually place at the top level, top 5, top 6, and usually it's a top 3. We are noted as the top 3 teams in the world. I'm not bragging because when we reach number 1, I'll be back here telling you something different. But I wanted to run this fast and then get into a question-answer period. In the early 1800s, it took off, the interest in the game in this country. And around that time, in the middle 1800s, they pronounced Canada as lacrosse. The game of lacrosse is Canada's national game. But you know something? They never documented or legislated in Parliament a formal recognition. So it was competing with hockey. Sometime in the 1980s, they finally reached a compromise, and Parliament did legislate a law that gave recognition. And well, here's how they did. In wintertime, the game of hockey is our national game. And in the summertime, the game of lacrosse is our national game. And so they're given that dual recognition. And then the rest, they said, hockey is a big thing across Canada. It's a big thing across the world. The game of lacrosse, we'll give it time to mature, to grow, and to share with other parts of the world. How they want to promote the game has leapt up. There's now an organization called World Lacrosse. It's set up like the United Nations. Countries select their players, who represents them, who plays, etc. And it's just like a United Nations a competition of sorts. Everybody's glad to be representing their own nationality, their own countries. And so the thing I'm proud is the formal recognition given by the majority of the teams that play to the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. The Haudenosaunee Nation people, they say, well, you invented the game. You brought the game to the world. And you are excellent players. You have a philosophy of not just the playing aspect of it, but you have a philosophy about life itself and how you conduct yourself as a human being, how you stand in the world. And so those are lessons we'd like to share send your message out throughout the world. And so that's the way it has been for the last 1983. We started our national program. And it didn't really start off that well. We got trounced by the United States, trounced by Canada. 20 years later, we're more competitive. 2015, the Iroquois Nation, Haudenosaunee, hosted the World Box Lacrosse Championship, which Canada won eventually, but they had a tough time beating Haudenosaunee. And I, for one, don't really look at who's going to beat who. My thing is who's going to participate and field a program that allows players to compete at a level of international proportion. And it starts from school. When I get an invitation, I always like to come up because it's an opportunity for young athletes to think, what's the game of lacrosse? I mean, what is it compared to hockey, basketball? Everything is going, it has a history, it's big money. The game of lacrosse is starting to come up to that same. I predict that in the next 5-10 years, it'll be one of the biggest growing sport in the world. When other countries pick up the game and play, and it starts to grow all over the world, you know the interest generates the kind of features of the sport. Everybody's interested in the game itself. You're all young people. You're young enough to wait 5 years and see what happens. But with growing interest, you pick up a stick in the backyard or in a recreation or an arena, soccer field, football field. You get that feeling, oh, this is a good game. And so I leave you with that because one of the pet projects for me how do you share a sport and its teachings with everyone? Well, I wrote a book. And if anybody can properly pronounce the wording that is written here, I'm going to give you that book. So pass it around. When you think you can read it out to me, and I'll be the judge. You're going to start going this way. Take a look at it. Pretty close.
Yeah, it says it. It says it. Deyun Chi Guax.
Whoa, ho, ho.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Deyun Chi Guax.
Anyway. So 1, 2, ladies. Way down there. There's a little bit of history, illustration, information, and I would have brought a lot more. I've written 2 books now on lacrosse itself. Just a little background that might help you in your studies, but general knowledge and general interest. And if you want to write more, you can write here at McGill, and they'll get a hold of me, and we can send you some more. But when I went to the traveling colleges where they produced the book in Akwesasne, and that's all they had. They said we have to go for another printing, which spells success. If they ran out and they're going to print some more probably within a month's time, they will have more books to sell. And I told them, I said, I'll promote it for you if you let me have these books. So y'all can have that one as a gift from me, okay? And I want to thank everybody. I didn't get a chance to talk about the different type of sticks that is played. Choctaws played the game, and they are anywhere in Carolinas, Midwestern states, Cherokees also. This is another form, different types, and you can see the lacrosse stick itself varies. These are all ceremonial games that they play, very much attached to their culture. The Haudenosaunee have this stick, and we just love playing with a wooden stick because it has all kinds of dimensions to the game that we consider an honor to play. And they say when you're born, the father places that stick, or the grandfather, in your little cradle. When you die, you take that stick with you, because we always get buried with your stick as you go home. And so that's in our culture, in the way we honor the game, is very much part of us, the teachings that go with it. And I must admit, there's a young gentleman here from Akwesasne. The teaching part is something that's growing. That dance I told you about wasn't done a few years ago. Young people are relearning their traditional teachings. For the first time, they've removed this ban of you're going to be ashamed to be Indigenous, ashamed to speak your language, or even the traditional songs and dances of your ancestors, how you honor. You either laughed at it, the church told you it's no good, but now everybody's saying, wait a minute, this is very much part of us, and we want to honor our ancestors, our forefathers. And so those kind of teachings are very much a part of us now. I'm a member of the Haudenosaunee, used to be called the Iroquois Nationals, and the same thing that we're doing at that international level is putting cultural teachings back into the sport. And we get invited to different countries to talk about it. Usually I have a small delegation. We do demonstrations, we do clinics, and just to share that information. So on very short notice, to invite, I also want to invite you. Maybe you'll be part of this. Canada's invited the Haudenosaunee Nationals to perform a medicine game on Parliament Hill. This is in the spring, so I'll keep you informed how it's coming along. But we're all supposed to dress back like in the middle 1800s and actually make sticks like that we'll use for the game. Or at least a wooden stick anyway. And so if you're used to a plastic stick, we're going to spread the information around, and hopefully we'll pick up that interest. Your member of parliament is a man named Mark Miller. He's the Minister of Indigenous Services, but he's also very close to the Prime Minister. And I have lunch with them as the Prime Minister often. And so I know that they're very sincere in respecting Indigenous people, their history, their culture. They're on the right track. And so I'm all in favor they would pick some schools and put a small team together that would represent lacrosse game at its beginning, at its middle, and then later I had proposed an actual game between the highest level of college, university level players against our Haudenosaunee national, international team. And we'll play, because this goes on. Syracuse University plays against Haudenosaunee nationals. Other leading institutions in Boston also say, we want to play them. Well, I'd like to see that game played in Canada as well. So we will be in touch, and hopefully some of you will actually live to see and get involved in a game like that. So it's been promoted by Canada now at the highest level, and I know lacrosse is going to rebound. Montreal was a hotbed in lacrosse a few years back. So was Quebec City. And now they have a pro team in Halifax, and they're doing quite well. I predict the way we work at it is to promote the game, not just for the sport, for the history, for the culture, for the teachings it gives us, And so I wanted to share that with you. And thank you for coming. I'm glad to answer if you have any questions. I'll try to see if I can answer it. But this is the period of time I wanted to spend with you. So I want to thank you very much. Some of you may be too young to know that there used to be a television series called The Lone Ranger. And one of the actors, or the sidekick to the Lone Ranger, was a Native American called Tonto. And if you ever see those Netflix and other that show those black and white film series, well, Tonto went to California with a lacrosse team. He was discovered in a lacrosse game. And they made up a team of 5 teams in California. And that's how he became noticed, become an international film star. So there's different ways for people to be recognized, and he was one of my heroes growing up. In the 60s, he appeared in movies. He's from Six Nations near Brantford, Ontario. And we don't get to see many of our own people become heroes at that level. Now today, Alvin Morris finished at a high level in canoeing. When the United States, again in California, hosted the Olympics. We have other people that are coming along, younger people. But what I notice is that it's a great way to make peace. It's a great way to make friends. And this is what, to me, the game represents. So that's my message to you. Thank you for having me. And if you have any questions, I try to answer them now, but yes.
Yeah, I was reading a bit about you, and I read that film has been a part of your life, and if I'm not mistaken, you're a filmmaker. And I read that there was a film, I'm forgetting the name, but you were only formally credited with it in 2017. And so I'm just wondering a bit about what that was like, and maybe just if you've ever thought about making a film about lacrosse and the things that you're talking about, or if you've already done that. Yeah.
About 4 or 5 years ago, do you remember that?
When they did it on Salmon? When they did that documentary on Salmon?
No. This is a full feature movie. And it had worldwide distribution. It's in all theaters, but it was all about lacrosse. A small town team played a high level, full level high school, and they picked on a small native community. And eventually they played against each other, and they just went higher. And it has a good story to it. I just can't remember the name.
Grizzlies? Yeah. Or Crooked Arrow?
Yeah. I don't think it's Crooked Arrows, but it's like that. It's
Grizzlies with the communities up north.
Yeah. No, that's not the one.
Well, that's the Grizzlies one.
Yeah.
Crooked Arrows is the one with the Thompson brothers.
Yeah. So, no, but you're right. I was with the National Film Board for 7 years. And when I left, the one regret I had was there was a full feature length movie about the game itself. And we were working on a script, a storyline, and I left it there. Now, the guys that I was working with, they're all retired now, and sometimes they'll ask, did you ever do that movie? I says, no, but I plan to. I would really like to see something like that take in film form, a good story to tell. Anyway, I won't hold you up for supper. Thank you all for coming. Yawa.
I have a question. Who was your favorite player when you were
In lacrosse,
young? Yeah.
Gaylord Paulus from Six Nations. And he's up in Canada Sports Hall of Fame. I think last year he got in. His father, Ross Paulus, the same. But I have many, and some of them will show in that book. We have athletes that have stemmed from Akwesasne, Angus George, Angus Thomas. We have some of the modern ones that have reached international, national level, pro lacrosse. Mike Kanentakeron is one recent that played at the pro level, now is recently retired. And so, but to us in our small community, it's nice to see somebody that has gone that far and come back home, you know, and share the stories of what the game meant at the highest level. So we need to, I sit on, I'm president of the Akwesasne Lacrosse Hall of Fame. The people that we pick and honor are not necessarily the ones that scored the most. It's the ones that have given something to the game and brought honor, not to themselves, to his team, his community. And so we started something that attaches back to our home base, our own community. And that name, whether it's a Thomas, a Rompoint, a Cree, it just translates to us one of pride and sharing. So that's all I can share with you for tonight. I'm thankful that I've been able to come and share some of my experiences with you. Yanko, I'll say a few words in my language. When I was small, I lived with my grandparents. He had a small farm. And every day, every morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, I would hear him. He'd open his day by saying, "Thank you, Creator. Thank you for the health of my family and my community. Thank you for allowing me to see another day. And I want to express my thankful for all that is alive and has contributed to all of creation," he says. And he had words as it breaks down. I was about maybe 3, 4 when I started taking notice, and I kept that. I could see how it defined him as a human person. And so I studied it, and when I was old enough, I would say the same thing. And he also had an honor song, what they call the Great Feather Song. And so those are all cultural teachings. And I became a faith keeper when I was 16 years old. That means you're responsible for the upkeep of ceremonial songs, the speeches that go on in the longhouse, the speeches that are meant to respect life, the environment. All these teachings that we don't have today. The languages at one time has disappeared, almost extinct, and now amongst our people, there's a drive to recapture that. We want our culture back. We want our language back. Ceremonial knowledge to come back. And it's just something to think about, but to share it with others. Just like we share a game of lacrosse, brought it back. And so the temple is good. I look at the future of young people in the world should be based on peace. What are the principles of peace that we can all share? And I think our Haudenosaunee nation, Iroquois, can contribute to those teachings. And that's why I'm here. So, Yawa.